Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the fourth weekly Crit Friday. We took a little break last week. I am going to give everybody a moment to kind of pop in. Share screen 2. Okay. Should be seeing my screen, and then also just as a general note, there is about a 30-second delay between when I talk and when you actually see it. But I am going to jump in right now and say, press play in the discussions. People who are watching it at UArtsy, and I'm broadcasting as Lewis, so you'll see me talking as Lewis. I'm going to just pause for a second. Give me a shout out as soon as somebody sees my screen and what I'm doing, and then I'll know that we are successfully live. Hello, Daniel. Can you hear me? Can you see my screen, the UArtsy screen, our new blue look? While I'm waiting for my words to translate to you guys, I just want to make a little note about Crit Friday. I really want Crit Friday to be kind of this like special home. It doesn't, right now, it's not important to me if you take a class at UArtsy or not. I'm trying to make Crit Friday a real kind of special home where we can just kind of get together and talk and look at work. And kind of grow as artists, because we all work in our minds, which sometimes feels like a vacuum. But feedback is where we grow. It's when we bring this stuff out into the world, that's when things start to make a difference. Okay. Hey, Ash and Daniel can hear me. All right, good. So I know we're working. Enough pontification. Let's talk mechanics. So today we are going to, we skipped a week, so it kind of changes the format for me. So I'm going to literally refresh this page right now, and I'm going to start working downwards. So hoping we'll just kind of work downwards. And then the idea being, if you post it after I start this, I'm not going to necessarily see it. I won't see it until the end for sure. So Waylon just got in under the radar. So okay, now we want to take a look and just start talking. So today was really whatever you guys are working on, and there's a couple of things within the Crit system to help you kind of get a sense. Let me leave this. I'm just going to set this screen kind of up a little smaller so I can see your comments. Okay. Oh, it's a Whalen head, Ignacio. Sorry. If I drop out of annotation mode, there's the ability for me to see, what you think you could do differently, things like that. You can also add comments in there, and you can also add annotations. And if you add an annotation, then I'll know right away. So I'm just going to say temporalis. No, the frontal. Click in there, Ryan. So we want to start thinking, let me just type in forehead, save. And I'm even posting as Lewis. Okay. And so here we can kind of see how these annotations work. So you can help each other grow with these annotations as well. And that's kind of one of the goals that I've got for it. But I'm going to just kind of draw on the screen and do live crits as I go. Afterwards, you can add these, or I can add annotations, which I sometimes get in here and do to help kind of work things out. So let me just delete this guy. Okay. So if you've got anything you really want comments on, make sure you are listing these when you post. What looks good? What do you want feedback for? Or at least put it in comments. Because as it is right now, I have no way to know exactly what Ignacio is thinking. And so that is makes my crit job harder. It also makes it less likely that you're going to get the information that you want. I do lots of crits, and that's why I built this. I realized that people would come to me and say, "What's wrong?" And there's a saying, um, you know, the type of questions you ask determine the answers and the outcome you get. So if I was to answer the question of what's wrong, if I was to look at my own artwork and ask that question of what's wrong, well, I can tell you, I'll come up with 20,000 things that are wrong. And what is that going to do? Is that going to improve my artwork? Am I going to be better because now suddenly I see 20,000 things that are wrong? Not likely. More likely than anything, I'm going to be very frustrated, demotivated, and uninterested in fixing them because I'll be overwhelmed, sitting in the valley of the suck, just, depressed. So you got to ask the right questions. And asking the right questions means you've also got to start to develop your vocabulary. So you're developing your vocabulary not just as a sculptor, not just as a painter or a character artist. You're developing your vocabulary as an artist. And this means don't look at just the guys in our industry. Start looking at guys like Francis Bacon. Start looking at Lucian Freud. Start looking outside into the general, entire artistic spectrum, and see if you can learn from their processes as well. So I'm going to just give this a general note. And when I'm faced with a situation where I don't know exactly what people want, the first thing I do is I start going into vocabulary, and with the goal being that we will all learn and improve by developing our vocabulary. So there's a couple of things that I want to start to talk about in terms of vocabulary. So for example, what is this? What's that shape? And then there's another little shape right here. And then there's another little shape right there. Right? And so we see this shape kind of receding back into form. Okay, so that's good. That's all fair. I see the shapes. We've got shapes, but what are they? What's going on in here? Now, of course, in the beginning, we don't know what these things are. We don't have a lot of words for it. And we're occasionally lost. So what you have to do is start to be that explorer that starts to just name things. So you're looking for names and you're making names. Daniel's asking, is this going to be a record for this session? This is recorded. So this is part of Google Hangouts. It's on air. It's being recorded. It'll literally be available afterwards. All right. So what, Ignacio, are your words for brow? So I would say in common language, this is called the brow, this whole area. What other words do you have for that? Okay. Do you have glabella? Do you have superciliary arch? Do you have those words? What's this big thing sitting right here in the center? What's the little triangular piece down here that catches a little bit of light? What about the side of the eye? What is holding the side of the eye in there? What's protecting that eyeball? What's keeping that eyeball from literally falling out of the eye socket? There's got to be something underneath there, right? What is that called? This is what you need. You need the words. And in order to learn those words, what I did is I went to Grey's Anatomy. So not the TV show, although I do plan to watch last week's episode tonight. But Grey's Anatomy, it's either E or A. I used to be able to keep that really clear when I was focused on teaching, and make sure that you had the information in the right place. But I will tell you that as I have been getting into my own artwork, I have lost a lot of vocabulary, and that's an okay thing. And I tell you that because I'm asking you to focus on this vocabulary, glabella, superciliary arch, and things like that. But this vocabulary becomes internalized. If you were to go over to, say, Richard McDonald, and you were to say, ask him where this thing is, that, whatnot, he might know. But the fact that he remembers has nothing to do with him sculpting amazing, beautiful work. He's internalized it. And when we internalize stuff, we don't necessarily need that name anymore. It just gets culled from memory, and we just remember there's a form that's there. It's kind of like an old married couple, right? In the beginning of the relationship, you talk a lot. There's a lot of communication, and then as you get older, and you've been in the same situation so many times, you don't talk as often. There's less talk, not because anything's wrong, just because it's not needed. There's so much communication that happens non-verbally and just automatic, and that right now we need the words, and then later you're going to forget them and just internalize them. Okay, what's happening down here? So we need to learn about how the sternocleidomastoid comes down as a muscle and then goes in with a tendon, and that tendon straps behind the clavicle, right, wherever that clavicle is going, and then it has a little bit of a piece that comes out and attaches to the clavicle. But this creates a nice little space in here as we get the muscle on the other side, and boom. Wherever those clavicles are is going to determine where this is. So I see you have them up, but I don't have a clavicle here, so I have no idea what's accurate or not. So it's good to put those things kind of in there. Now, in these ears, you've got a chance to invent a whole bunch of vocabulary, but do you know where the tragus is? How about the antitragus? Start looking for those words and start seeing, where's the tragus and the antitragus in a bat? Where is that in a bat? And now suddenly you're going down the creature path, the creature designer path. What's a creature? What's a monster? A monster is a human and an animal combined in some way. Do creature designers develop anatomy entirely from scratch and memory or their imagination? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Almost uniformly, I cannot think of a case other than this, but I'm not going I'm not going to say 100% it's accurate. Almost uniformly, the guys I know, the processes that I've seen, people pull from nature. They pull from a creature. They pull from something in existence. And a creature designer's job a lot of times is to just kind of piece things together and then pull them apart just enough that it becomes their own. So these look like bat ears. So now you need to get in and say, they have the same fold at the top that we have. And where's that fold go in? And once you know the words that they use, it can help you kind of design that. So that's what I would do, is go in, Ignacio, and find more words to put in. Okay, Daniel. Give me a shout out if you're in there, Ignacio. Okay, so Daniel's put in what he likes and doesn't like. He likes the overall shape and design. Somehow I still need to play around with the rocket design on her back and need more reference of sci-fi to broaden my knowledge. So this is good because now I have a talking point. And I'm going to just kind of pull this over because it looks like it's quite large. So I'm just making this its own tab. And let's zoom out and look at it there. And then we can zoom in. So let's go back. Shape, design, play around with the rocket, and need more sci-fi reference. And is it sci-fi reference that you need, or is it Boeing engine turbine reference that you need? What is it that you really need the info on. So I'd say right off the bat, sorry, it's a little hard to scroll around here. Okay, so we have a lot of great stuff happening in the model. This is a really good, solid form. Now, do we want to dive in and start talking about anatomy and form, where it's working or not working? Is anatomy really the focus of this kind of piece? I don't think so. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that's just working so incredibly well. But I do think there are a couple of things that could get a little tweaked that would kind of help sell this design. One of them is up here in the corner of the eye. If you take the glabella, I'm not sure I'll be able to do this right. Let's say I put an eye in there. That's going to be the caruncula. Okay, and then we're going to have a little shape in there, and then we're going to get the orbit, and then this is going to drop down for the eyelid, and then la da 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 da. Do 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 do. Let's get our measurement. Bum, bum, bum. Squiggle drawing. This is something I've been doing a lot lately. It's I used to not trust this process, but now I trust it implicitly. Boom, boom, because I have a kinesthetic approach to a lot of this. All right, so I'm going to go over in green because that may or may not come across as readable to you. But what I really want you to focus on, Daniel, or just notice is when you're sculpting the glabella. Okay, the glabella is this little thing. It sits, then there's the superciliary arch up here. The glabella does this really beautiful kind of conch shell kind of twisting in. As it comes around, it twists into that eye and connects in really beautifully with the supraorbital margin. And this isn't 100% accurate, but I just want you to think about that when you're looking in this area. How does the glabella twist around and inside? And when it does that, it leaves this little pocket. This little pocket that exists in between the lacrimal, not the lacrimal, the palpebral ligament. Now, the palpebral ligament is really a fancy word for that's your eyelid. That's just a technical word. I'm a geek. I know it. It's called the palpebral ligament. It's actually one ligament that actually splits into two pieces, and it connects next to the lacrimal bone in there. But this extra space gets kind of left there because there's not an eyeball and there's not bone. So what goes in there? You could study that for a long time. But that's one thing that I think kind of you lose the shadow in there. And so you'll see some sculptors will say, like say John Brown talked about this. You got to put the shadow in. And so he doesn't necessarily want to focus on the anatomy and all of that and use the anatomical terms. Let's see if I can use black. Yeah. So his approach, and some artists' approach, is instead of using the anatomy term, they use just form terms. You got to put some depth in there. You got to put a shadow in there, things like that. And I've tortured myself learning anatomy, so I know what we're really talking about when we say shadow is you just don't have the forms twisting into each other enough. And there's some blank space to kind of fit. So I'm spending a really enormous time on that one thing. And it's a small thing because there's so much that's so beautiful here. This nose I really like. The lips I really like. You could get the alar cartilage to be a little bit more distinct. Which of course you got to be subtle with that in a girl. And this cheekbone from the zygomatic into the cheek fat is awesome. This lower lip pulling in, all of that, there's really solid stuff going on there. The other thing I'll mention is this is a really simplified forearm. I would be a little mindful of this curve I'm outlining right here. This curve in green is good. This curve in white, not so good. And so you've got the brachioradialis coming in, and then you've got a couple of other ones, but they're going to start a little lower. Tiny difference, but it helps because it just looks inflated. This, oh, I don't have the same capacity. Hips, pelvis area, thighs, get a little strange bump right there. I tend to like to kind of straighten that out. And you could straighten that out and drag it down a little bit so that you've got some meat in the knee. You're losing a little meat in the knee, and then that'll help set the calf up better, because right now it looks a little weak right there. Even when it comes here, I will still straighten that out. Drag it down, and that way I get to the tibia, head of the tibia, patella, femur. There you go. Give you a sense of some of that. But we could use a little more and a little bit more volume right in this area, and then you just kind of duck out a little bit of that gastrocnemius. Tiny change. Really awesome. I love the legs and side views. I really love that. And breasts, I think, are handled quite well here. And I really like how everything kind of dives in, creates that shadow there. I really enjoy this kind of really crazy, great shapes. I love it. And in an area like this, you got some nice, clean, flat planes, a little bit of detail, You could probably do with a little bit more of that detailing. But I do agree with you that this falls apart, and especially visible in this view. There's just so much happening, and then this is really just a block and a cylinder. What about some kind of form that's going to kind of pull off of that? Let's see if I can do anything. Boom, boom. And we're going to pull it out. Something that can kind of start to merge these worlds, blend this, give it a little bit more character, and then some kind of event or dial or something pushing out, and then I don't know what we would do. This could use some more detailing. From a back, I think we look really good. Repeated patterns, nice little lettering detail, I would say. Good little pieces, chunks here. This is nice and simple, but there's enough complexity above it. But I think up in this area, we just lose it. So I'd agree. I think overall your design's really good. I think that the anatomy in the female, this is like supermodel thin, but that's not, we're in the game and film industry. This is not unnatural. I think you handled the realism quite well. I really like the side view because there's so many things going on. This juts out and it's got this kind of crazy detail right in there. This comes out, breaks that up. You got the breasts that are broken up in multiple sections below. And then this is all clean and broken up. And then boom, big circle, big circle. And right in here is where it's weakest. Right down here, it's great. All right, lots of talky. Hope that helped, Daniel. Great job. Adam, I see one thing. Sculpting hair, how can I push the anatomy in a caricature and still make it believable? Take Danny Williams' class. That's the way to do that. Not to be self-serving. But that's a very large question. How do I take anatomy and go into make it more of a caricature but still believable? Because in essence, that is character design. Like if you look at Mr. Incredible, you know, he's got this big, huge chest. He's got these little tiny legs, you know, just these little thin little dealios, and he's got this thick head. You know, what is that? You know, that's just male anatomy characterized. So males have strong shoulders, big chest, and they've taken the pectoralis and the shoulders and they just kind of blur it all into one big, massive shape. That's what character design does. Of course, they start with this 2D and then they kind of build it out from there. But what we're really talking about is just simple planes and structure. You just don't do all the small little planes, like this little tiny plane in here may not happen, or it may. And it's a process of exaggerating. But either way, you still have to have structure. So you still got to put something in to delineate some of whatever the anatomy is. So in terms of the eye, you still need to have a infra and a supra orbital margin. Still got to have some characterization. So this kind of blasts that away. How can you do that but still keep the anatomy so that you've got a supraorbital margin? Well, you probably just need to kind of pull this out, pull it out here, and then it just, you get a little bit of a raise up in that area, like a bunch of wrinkles. But you still got to keep that form in there. And in terms of hair, I think your approach right here is really good. I've seen Mike DeFeo talk about hair, and I would recommend checking out his Crit Friday, which should be available in the lectures down below this. He does talk about hair, and one of the things that he talks about is the rhythm. And so you take a direction and you just start to kind of break that up into threes and see if you can kind of part this stuff out. So it's been a while since I've drawn hair patterns in. And I am not trusting myself 100% with it, but you start to kind of look for these patterns of three that you can kind of intertwine with each other. But check out his lecture on it, because there's this one little trick I'm forgetting right now where you draw a line and then how you kind of break that line up. All right, so we just need a little bit firmer structure around the eyes. I feel like that eyeball's going to fall out. And then also, this is a big valley that could drop down. You could get more there. And with the lip going up like this, it doesn't get the same volume. So you're going to start to pull the volume. It starts to whittle away. So this is all going to get smoothed away as it kind of reaches up over his nose. But really cool. I like the shape. Boom, boom, and then this. So you've got a real nice caricature happening in there where all the lines kind of just come down right in there. Could have more happening inside the nose to kind of emphasize that. Like you could have the nose wrinkles in there, and then you have the nose kind of pull up so you can have a little bit of a furrowed nose. But this nose, this simplification, I think is probably, it probably detracts the most. Maybe the clay buildup like you've done here to kind of wend some form in there. All right. Let me check comments. You guys seen my video? Caiaphas is saying no video. Oh man, it's possible there's no video. I don't have this selected. Where are you watching this from, Caiaphas? And I'm going to pause 2 seconds and watch this. I can't go back in time with this being live. No, it should have video. I can hear and see you just fine. So David can hear. All right, well, let me just keep moving forward. Worst case scenario, I've also got this recording a little bit, but I usually don't keep these recordings. Mark. First head sculpt. Happy with it. Taking notice of anatomy and proportions. What I don't like. The ear was tricky, and I don't think I quite got the eyes right. More next time. Okay, well, this is great. So I think it's your first head sculpt. This is a really amazing job, and you are probably super critical of what you've done. So I am going to show you what I think is working incredibly well. Number one, the spacing of these eyes and the extra form out here is beautiful. Really well done. A lot of times we tend to make the eyes too large. So that's really a great thing. I love this corner of the mouth. You've got the forms for the lower and upper going really well. And this is a very strong zygomatic that really does quite well with the rest of the face. And it has a great sweep back, which is nice. So I would say in terms of your arches, you've got them really well done. You've got the cheekbone, the forehead, you've got the muzzle of the mouth, and you've got that little bit of the jaw. These all kind of have what in olden days they would call the draft, which refers to the prow of a boat, their little sail. If we can do a top view. So it refers to this part of a boat going down. And we don't sail as much as they used to. So who knows what the heck a draft is unless it's the NFL. But if you look at the old anatomy books, that's what they'll call it. And this is quite well done, the way in which these descend back into space. Again, echoed here with nice frontal bone right in there, frontal eminence. And this is really good how you hollow out because there's this little muzzle that happens here, and then there's other stuff that happens, and then there's the masseter muscle. So you've got a separation between the masseter and the muzzle of the mouth, basically. Nice. You've got a similar thing in here where you could put in that glabella pulling down, and that'll help you get the shadow of the eye a little better. I think your ears are great. They're missing only a few fundamental features. This is good. You've got that feature there. Helix, anti-helix. You could kind of push the ear hole in. You've got a suggestion of the nuchal line. And I think these are all really solid how they're working. Good, strong jaw. You may be able to get a little bit more of the temporalis in here. And remember, the temporalis will sit, like the temporalis is a muscle. Comes around underneath the cheekbone. So you can literally sometimes, in some people, you can see that it creates this form break. It's like, here's this guy, and then boom. Muscle. Especially in bald people with really big jaws, you see that real clearly. So this is a great job. keep that in mind. You've even got a nice suggestion for the lower part of the lip. The changes you need to make are minor, but now what you need is mileage. Lots of these. Good luck, Mark. Okay. Okay, so Francesco, you were pushing yourself, right? How can I do this without any reference? I totally get that. I try to do that too. It does cause problems. So the way I would recommend doing this is you sculpt it without reference and then you go get reference and fix it. That's the key kind of thing. Because looking at it with reference and analyzing it later is actually really key. So I'm going to tell you some structural things, and then I want you to go back and get reference and start to think about it and think about how to fit it all in. So in this area of the knee, there's a problem. What's the problem? I can tell you what the anatomical problem is, and I will, but what would be the problem with this knee? I could tell you the visual problem. Like it feels a little bloated, right? So somebody might look at this and say, yeah, your knee feels a little bloated. Um, but is that what's wrong with it? Or is that just a description? What if I tell you you don't have the semitendinosus right? Or maybe the bicep femoris or maybe your vastus medialis or lateralis, sorry, is not connecting with the bicep femoris correctly, which would be right because that's this bloated form is part of the problem. But does telling you that help you fix it? The most important thing that's going to help you is to start to look for the form underneath the anatomy. So if we were to say, look at an arm, and then we've got the focus, Ryan. I just lost my brain. And then we have the shoulder, right? So we have all of that. But what is this? This is a cylinder. These are two cylinders in a sphere. And what's this down here? Well, it's a cylinder. Within that cylinder is things like, hey, we got a bicep, folks. Within that cylinder is, hey, we have a brachioradialis, which is doing something weird. We have a group of flexors, which are doing something weird. We have the brachioradialis. We have this tricep, which is like the craziest muscle ever, right? And then we have a deltoid, and then the deltoid's got 3 parts. And by now, this looks like it's a crazy mess. I don't understand exactly what I'm doing here or talking about because there's so many different things happening and all of these parts. And then the pectoralis comes in here, and it's like, oh my God, what is going on? And then there's the lats, and then there's the serratus, and then there's the rib cage. Where's the rib cage? And then your brain starts doing exactly what my pin is doing and keeping everything organized. Like there's the external oblique, and where's that frontal sphenoidial, the iliac, yada yada, and then we're in some strange land. And I've gone over that same area 20,000 times. So, what do we do? Do we focus on the anatomy? No. We focus on the stuff in white. Focus on the stuff in white. Because the stuff in white is what got this correct. And this. All the scribbly lines still fit. But inside my brain, I was holding the idea of a circle and a cylinder or a cube or whatever you want. This would be more a cylinder for me. And so when I was scribbling within those lines, even though they weren't on paper, they were in my brain. So what is it that makes up the leg? Well, you got a cylinder. Slight tapering to it. What is that knee? Any guesses, anyone? What is that knee going to be? It really helps if I've got a 3/4, but basically that knee is a cube. If you were to right now go in and sculpt that as a cube that then connects to a cylinder, slightly tapered cylinder, it would suddenly look cleaner. And then you've got this position. You can do this little triangle. You can do the tibialis, the tibia muscle, sorry. You push out a little bit for the patella, and then you push out a little bit more for the fat end of the patella, and then you can carve away a little bit. So you have this cube. Let's see if we can look at it from below. And patella's in the top half, right? And so then we start to keep this, but at a certain point we start to cut. So we'll start cutting this. But this backside we don't cut because the semitendinosus and all these things are coming in there. And then this is going to have to merge in with that cylinder, which it does quite naturally. It's just the cylinder flattens out in the back. And now we start to see a little bit of what we got coming in, and we start to straighten out some things here. We put the little tibia in there, and we start to kind of build this, and then there's the muscles, and all that stuff kind of comes in and goes from there. The drawing's a bit of a mess, but it's important for you to figure this out and to figure out, how do I take this cube and turn that cube into a knee? What do I need to cut? Where do I cut? I could draw this perfectly left, right, and center for you all day, and it's going to make no difference at all. You're going to have to get in there and figure that out. So this needs to be a cube, and the cube needs to have a proportion. Where's the patella? It's in the top half. Okay. Where does it end? Well, it's going to end at that tibial tuberosity, right? Which is right there. And is it a one-to-one relationship? Is it a cube or is it a rectangle? No, it's a cube. So keep that tibial tuberosity, cut it in half, patella on the top, femur, both sides. These are the epicondyles. That's a word. See how my dyslexia increases when I focus on my own artwork. Epicondyle. I look like a child writing these things nowadays. But I have to embrace that because, as we all face, you can't write poetry and be a perfect grammatician at the same time. It doesn't work that way for humanity. When we create art, we break rules. And those rules are usually just our own preconceived rules. Even if we end up using perfect grammar at the end, important art happens when we are breaking our own boundaries, hence our own rules. But we'll save that for another pedagogical moment. Hope that helped, Francesco. Get the anatomy, but when you get the anatomy, get like Gottfried Bomis. I always call him Bams, but get Gottfried Bomis. Bomis. German. Get his books. He does the structural stuff. And how do I say your first name? Is it Eden? So I'm going to murder it. I apologize. And this is coming from Steve Lord's class. So this is going to be like a little bit hard to critique because Steve Lord has devoted his life and is superhuman in my books. He's one of the best people we have working on the planet. So let's just look and see what we can comment on, because there's always something, right? This is a beautiful, beautiful piece, an incredibly beautiful piece. And I think the areas that we could start to massage are very small. So how do we, what areas do we need to massage to kind of take this to the next level? That area, I think, has to do with overlaps. And that's a kind of fun thing to start to study. Now, you have overlaps in how these larger forms connect in here and what's on top and what's on bottom. But it's in the joints that you start to lose overlaps. It's kind of in here, but kind of not. And this is just blocked in down here, so I understand the overlaps aren't there. You've just kind of put it in as though it's a 2D thing. And you're going to work on that. And that's most likely the case here, but I'm just going to point it out for others, because when we're doing this, deciding which one is on top really starts to become important. Separating bone from, this is going to dive in. Separating bone from muscle using H polish to kind of make that clean. Which one of these guys has a little swell of volume? Right now they're just a flat plane. And it'd be worthwhile to see if we could decide. When there's separate pieces of geometry like this, it really works quite well. But when they're coming in, this is when you really need to start to define that overlap. And that's also down here. How is the tricep, and how's all of that working, and what's overlapping what? Start to pull it away from the 2D aspect. This is another moment in which you can start to push this over the top. You don't really need to know what reality is here. At this point, you're creating something that looks sinuous and beautiful from your eyes. So that's what I would say. Really love the striations in there. Just shows an amazing amount. I think you said you're in law school or something like that. And when I saw that, I was like, this is such a waste to just, ditch law school. I say that tongue in cheek because I would be conflicted with my own, one of my own family members doing it. The life of an artist has its own problems. But the sculpt here, this is very beautiful. It's an attention to detail, and an ability to go from 2D, which is what we have here, to 3D, which we have here. This is not an insignificant accomplishment. So good job. All right, I'll leave you with that. Francesco, did we already cover Francesco? I think so. Yes. Quick notes. Yeah, this is really good. Again, without anatomy, a reference, I assume. No feedback. Okay. Check your. I'm missing something back here. I feel like I am. So check that. Let's go up here because it's a little easier. How's everybody doing? Seeing my audio? Let's check if there is any notes. No notes. Please give me notes, guys. Please give me notes. List what looks good, what doesn't look good. Put something in the comments. Otherwise, I fly blind. I got no idea. And my current approach to that is to get you focused on words, because you really got to build your vocabulary to start to talk about it, which I understand. So I think overall design, this is pretty neat. I really like the clothing. I'd say this is really working well for me, more so than the face. And the folds and everything flowing, and it's very recognizable. So I think there's a lot working there. The folds in the hoodie, those are unnatural. So this into this is one big chunk. Most likely you're going to have, a bigger chunk and then smaller pieces, and then this gets kind of broken up as the weight collapses down. But to have them evenly distributed, like 1, 2, 3, that's not going to be an accurate representation of the weight of that hoodie. All right, we need some words, but you're doing quite well. I'm not sold on the glabella and going straight into the eye like that, but it's possible. I'd say the biggest issue is the zygomatic, the cheekbone. And we really see that down here where the orbit of the eye and the cheekbone, or I'd say the eye bag becomes the cheekbone. And you don't want that. You want the eye bag to be an eye bag. So you would draw that a little bit more down, a little bit straighter. And then just still make a cheekbone. And there's a general rule that the cheekbone is underneath the nose. You can draw a line in there and you got that cheekbone. It's just, it doesn't exist. Like, and you come in here and it's like, now suddenly it's ET. And I would try to give that orbit of the eye some love. See if you can build that in. Nose is great. Mouth is great, although I do think we could make the upper lip more dominant, and think about that nodule. The upper lip is dominant in most cases. And then you can kind of smooth the planes. And then especially on a character like this, you're going to have this kind of marionette line, as the plastic surgeons call it. You have the depressor anguli right in here, and then you got this deep line right where I put red. And that's called the marionette line from plastic surgeons. It's a horribly named anatomical landmark designed to get you to spend, or to get most likely older women, to get them to spend tens of thousands of dollars on plastic surgery. Keep in mind, when we talk vocabulary, everybody's got an agenda with vocabulary. And if you study postmodernist theory and not neurolinguistics, not Chomsky, but I am forgetting the writer I'm thinking of now. But if we were to go like, philosophical on it, everybody has an agenda with words. When we look at anatomical study, why is it named in Latin? It sounds nice, and it's doctors, and it separates doctors from everybody else. Is that exactly why they did it? Not necessarily, but that's one of the useful outcomes. As artists, we get this chance to just say, hey, screw you and your vocabulary. We're going to use this. We're not going to use this. I'll call it the lacrimal bone, but you know what? I'm not going to get all like hotty-toddy about it. It's fine. It's a lacrimal bone. It helps me understand what's happening in here, but that's it. I'm going to call this the marionette line, but thank God I'm, not a woman, and on the older spectrum, worrying about that line as the fat kind of accumulates here, because that's a really bad word to present that. It is the distinction between the depressor anguli and the orbit of the lower part of the orbit of the mouth. So put that in there for this character, and keep in mind that skin gathers in specific places. So there is a place right around here and right around here where the skin will glue itself to the skeleton, and that is why there are jowls in older people, men and women, that go something more like that. Okay, hope that helps. Where are we? Did we go up? Yeah, we went up. Francesco, can't get you again, and I hope Scott did a good job with you in this because it looks great. Only thing I'd say is you're kind of missing that 8th rib, and these ribs are a little manufactured. You really want. I'm gonna crit this a touch, actually. Sorry. So sternum, 6th rib, 7th rib, right? 8th rib, right in there. 6th, 7th, 8th. And then you go 9th and 10th, right? And then you get the pelvis in there. So this 8th rib, Sabenhauer talks about that 8th rib is kind of one of the most dominant parts of anatomy, male chest anatomy. If you were to look at your own chest, not the belly, because if you're like me, the belly pushes out further than everything else. But if you're looking at the skeleton, the part of the chest from looking straight down, I am at this very moment looking straight down at my feet, and I take my hands onto the chest. So I can put them on my sternum. Like, let's say I put them on my sternum, right where I'm writing that big red circle. And then I move them down in this direction. That part that sticks out the farthest, that's where your 8th rib is. And so on me, that is right about here. Yeah. That 8th rib, once you know that, that's a landmark. Put your 8th rib in, and then you can kind of flow the 7th rib, and you can kind of push this stuff back in accordingly. Paul. No comments? Okay, let's talk vocabulary. Whoops. Do not edit that, Ryan. Or I can blame it on Lewis. You'd never know. All right, so this is a little bit difficult to crit. There's a couple of reasons why. One, if you are replicating a sculpt back in that day, then they have very stylized senses of anatomy. And so I wouldn't critique this from the same perspective that I would a different piece. And so what we want to do is talk vocabulary a little bit, but really what we need to do, I think, is we need to start to talk about planes and structure. You know what? We really got to talk vocabulary and overlaps. Because while my job is to have the most impact on you in the shortest amount of time. That's my job. To help change things, not to promote my anatomical knowledge. So I am in this very moment thinking, how do I have the most impact in the least amount of time so that it's as powerful as possible? Okay, I'm going to recommend, God, this is tough because you've got some real subtle, nice anatomy here, although that shoulder is quite large. And then you've got some simplifications, like this is just a very flat plane with nothing in it. And then this cheek is a very flat plane. And we don't have the distinctions that they might put, the subtle distinctions that they would put. So I would actually focus on anatomy. I would not try to replicate the simplicity of the model right away, because you can simplify them after you have the anatomy. So let's do this. In this area, do you know where the trapezius is inserting and how it kind of comes forward and attaches, right? But that's the muscle. What's wrong here is the bone. That is a nice straight line. You're good with muscles. And in fact, that's what I would say is probably the way in which we can have the biggest impact is you're good with muscles. You need to study the bones, the skeleton. And the joints. Perfect. We have our directions, bones, and joints. The biggest way to impact the quality of your work right now would be for you to go more in depth into bones and joints. Do you know where the epicondyle is? How is the olecron process in the epicondyles connecting and interacting? Is that really there? And does it bend like this? This is the tibia, and it gets assumed by fat, and then it kind of emerges out, not fat, but muscle, and then it merges out. Okay, where's the clavicle? How's the clavicle's beautiful shape? Where's the acromion process? Okay, where's the zygomatic in there? Do you have the zygomatic? What about the nasal bone? That's what you need to focus on. Bones underneath it all, and anywhere that there is a joint, you want to get that stuff locked down. Let's look at your feet, and I think we're going to, yes. So this kind of flows down, and then suddenly now what's going on? This is a broken foot, and that's totally fine. I break my feet all the time. My sculpt's feet all the time. But now is the time in which you put some more volume in there and you start to make that stick. And don't focus on just the surface because you've got the surface with the all of this. Now you need to get in there and start to build the actual anatomy. You know, maybe this leg is twisted around and this foot needs to kind of twist around to kind of accommodate that. Either way, you need to start working on joints. Boom, 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 and then bones in the face. Thanks, Paul. Miroslav, I tried to keep forms very subtle, soft. Face does not feel natural enough. Okay. Sculpting women is hard. One of the hardest parts of it is that we tend to have, especially around women, we tend to have the most preconceived ideas. If you were to meet a supermodel face to face, they would not look like you expect them to look. Not just because Photoshop, but also because of lighting. And not just because of lighting, but also because it's a photograph, it's in a magazine and it's small, or, you know, something like that. If you see them in person, lots of things change. And not only that, but somebody who might look beautiful in the magazine tends to actually look a little strange in the real world. And going between those two worlds when what you're trying to what you're thinking about is natural enough, that's the thing, like it doesn't look natural enough, that's hard on you, very hard. So be a little mindful of that. I am going to give you a couple of anatomical points and things to consider. One of them would be definitely the glabella. It's like the theme today. Also, the nasal bone. These are the lateral cartilage and the nasal bone. They're going to swell out more than you think. The areas that I'm going to outline in white don't change. Don't change this. Don't change the mouth. Don't change this part of the eye. Don't change forehead or this part. Don't change that. Don't change. Don't change. Don't change. Don't change. Don't change. And don't change. All I want you to change is just this inner part of the nose and a little bit of the glabella. And that's this area right in here. That's all I want you to look at and change. I'm going to do it again from this side. This is a bone, the maxilla. The maxilla is the least studied part of the human face, and it has some of the most significant impact from somebody who's Asian, somebody who's Caucasian, somebody who's in South India, somebody who's in Africa, somebody who's, wherever. This has a massive impact on the face, flattening it, pushing it out, things like that. But focus on those things. And I think it will help with the naturalness, but do not change anything else. And see if that little bit makes a difference. Katul, got notes for me? No notes. So this is going to be hard, Katul, because I'm wondering what you're thinking. There's a lot of lines, and we've got a lot of stuff going on. So now this is what I would consider a block, just a very rough block-in. How do you tell me or the viewer what you're going to do or what you're trying to do? Overlaps. Gotta focus on overlaps. Okay, get this part to wend in and this part to be dominant over it. All right, and then get these parts to wend in. Start to define overlaps of maybe this is over the top and start creating more interesting stuff. Because right now it's just line, 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 line. And that is boring to the eye. But the concept behind a character that has all of this stuff, Green Lantern has all of this stuff in him. It's a crazy amount of stuff going around, wrapping around. There's all kinds of characters and work that has this happening. The way you make it more interesting is you focus on your overlaps. Good luck. Miroslav, I just want to look at this, but we've already talked about one piece. Yeah, I think it's just that maxilla you need to change. I would not change anything in this model except for the maxilla and what we already noted. Don't change anything. Daniel. No reference used. You guys like to test yourselves. Don't shy away from reference, but don't worry, I understand why you want to do that. You want to test yourself. And that is great. It's manly. I didn't use any reference. I built this skyscraper from logs I milled myself from the Oregon desert. It's a desert now because we've milled all the trees from there. This is a great exercise to tell what you know and don't know. And you clearly know a lot. So that is really great. Just beautiful. So what do we want to comment on? Let me actually go back. I think you had some notes. No. List what you don't like. Quick sculpt using Dynamesh. Okay. Okay, so do we want to study anatomy more? Do we want to learn more about the things to kind of change or make work? Or what do we want to accomplish? There's little things like, is the head of the fibula kind of high? It could drop down an inch. Kind of a small deal, right? The vastus lateralis, really nice how it works in here. I really like how this bundle is in here, this bundle of tendons from the membranosus, tendinosus, and then also the adductors, they all kind of come down. So that's really cool. I think that your volume for the hip is just beautiful, right? Really nice. And then how this comes around and I see the ilium in there. Great job. This is really beautifully sculpted. The rib cage could extend out this far, but I might bring it in a little more, but this is great. You could really put the xiphoid process in there a little bit more clearly and really have that chest kind of dive in. Separation of the pec is quite solid. Okay. And, okay. So good. And that roundness is great of the breast. I think we're doing really good there. It's good that you have the bicep off to the side like this. Tricep separating out from this little bit of the epicondyle. Really well done. And deltoid. So there's a lot of really wonderful things working. This you could wonder about, but she's got very solid legs. So I would need to see reference myself. I'd say the foot is a little bit on the weak side. That's an area that you could kind of give more study to. So I would say at this point, the biggest impact you could have would be to go to extremities, not the torso, but go to extremities. Everything from here, and start to really work these forms and start to understand the skeletal structure of them on another level. It's really a solid sculpt, but we kind of lose it in the back of the hand a little bit. And we lose it right in here a little bit. What is the forms? How are the arches aligned? Things of that nature. And you've got a great sculpt ahead of you. So very cool. I'd also say don't forget the trapezius has a descending portion. Actually, they call this the ascending portion. Okay, where are we at? I need a couple minutes here in just a second because I actually booked a life model. And okay. We just have a few more to go. So give me 2 seconds and let me inform them, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're going to do this in 10 minutes, guys. What do you think? Dan, first good render. Isn't that a great moment? When you're, well, would have been a great moment. Did something go wrong in the system? No. Okay, let's skip that because I'm going to lose out of time. I can look at this right now and say that it does look good, but very uniform. So throw some longer staining patterns and see if you can't break up this line. But really great job. I really like this top part. That's really nice. And the shadow, you still got detail in it. That's good. It's a lot of contrast, black and whatnot in there. Charles, you left me notes. Asymmetry pushes the likeness forward. Anatomical landmarks are strong. Good details feel a little too slapped on, could be more refined. It's a nice start, but feels too CG. The likeness is achieved. Further development on finer points. Okay. So there's a couple of problems with the CG aspect. One of them is you're looking at it in the computer. So that makes it hard, and then you're rendering it. And so that makes it hard. So scanning a person's face and comparing the scan details with a grayscale, that can actually help you with the form. Otherwise, in the render, no matter what you do, you're going to be battling this. It looks CG. Your sculpt could be perfect and it could look CG just from the render. And so let me talk just a few notes. I think the asymmetry is really cool, but I do think that this is a really strong plane change. And I'm not sold on it. I think it could be subtler. And I think we could invoke a little bit of the nasal bone, because the nasal bone's supposed to go like this. The nostrils are supposed to they don't necessarily end, like, how do I say this? Wherever the nostrils connect, not where they end, because they flare outwards, but where their skin tissue connects with the face, that tends to be where that nasal opening is. So you could drop that and alter the plane slightly. So it's not so up here, kind of is a little bit lower down. That would feel a little bit better to me, because right here, this looks, it's possible, right? That form's possible, but it's just really a strong change from here to here, here to here. So we would look to trim this, but again, I don't have reference, so I don't know. That's just me looking at going, hey, that's a little bit questionable because it's such a strong line. And you don't want that. You don't want somebody questioning that. This is really good. Muzzle of the mouth. Really nice upper lip. The lower lip, you could soften it a little bit more right in here. Kind of lose that, but no, I don't think it's necessary. This is really nice how you have the zygomatic kind of coming in, and then the fat or the infraorbital triangle, which isn't a triangle in this guy, more like Al Pacino, shows more of the maxilla. So that's really good. I love how that comes in. Instant replay. But this form on this side, I'm a little not sold on. I would love to have that zygomatic still come in a little bit, and then have this form kind of fill a little bit lower. You have the superciliary arch. Awesome. Frontal eminence is split into two. That's great. You could put a sagittal crest. You could also take this marionette line and you could emphasize the triangularis right in this green area. Just a touch more. I don't know. It's tough. Maybe it's not. Maybe what it is we de-emphasize the triangularis a little bit, so it goes underneath the nodule. Nodule, and then the triangularis is underneath it. I think that second option is better. So cool. Summary. This is a very strong plane change. This is a little bit too harsh. Zygomatic is great. Superciliary arch, very strong. Frontal eminence, nodule, that upper lip, really great. Good job, Charles. Congrats. Eng, am I saying that right? Look, you left me some annotations. Model still a whip. I did fan art from God of War and got stuck about the anatomy because it's half man and half goat. Ah, yes. Okay. I love the anatomy, though. But I would definitely stick to human, goat. So 8th rib. Clavicles could be stronger. Deltoid is in multiple parts. The clavicular portion tends to only reach half of what the acromial portion gets. So you can make that thinner. That actually creates room for the bicep, and then the pectoralis kind of fits in, and then that is going to create a really nice, deep armpit for you. That flows a little better. I'm liking the back, but we need skeleton. Where's the 8th rib, 9th rib, 10th rib? Where's the 10th rib? Okay, now you're getting into the sacrum, and then this is going to be a canine butt. And so this is different. They don't have the same butt we have. They have stuff that comes down and wraps around, and they have they don't have a gluteus. There's a Robert Beverly Hale has in some video course he did a long time ago. He talks about how the gluteus maximus is our muscle. It's the human muscle. It's what lets us stand up. That's why we got junk in the trunk. It helps us stand up, as opposed to apes who they've got no booty whatsoever. Kim Kardashian is the evolution of humanity, ladies and gentlemen. Just kidding. And so, yeah, this is really cool. Check out Steve Lord's student work. That can help you. And then also, this is all pure canine. You don't need goat. You just need canine. And that'll be a little easier to access. And it'll be a good bridge. Okay. Ashrafal. Did you leave me some notes? Proportion looks okay. Face is not attractive. Hair has the same problem, but I don't see the likeness in the base form. Okay. Face is not attractive. Face is not attractive. Face is a little surprised, isn't it? Pull the eyeball up so that the iris is more like that. That'll make a difference. Right now she looks surprised. It's because you see so much of the iris. The nose. This is a little Michael Jackson. Give her a little alar cartilage. Make that a little bit of a stubby nose. Stubbier than you think. That can add cuteness. I like this form. So it's the surprised eyes that's getting you. And so I think everything's looking really good. You do want to study the anatomy and put teeth in there. That'll make a difference in your render. So you're going to study joints because these joints are falling apart. The knee is the best, and the ankle's okay, but that elbow I'm not sure about. And the shoulder I'm not sure about. Study your joints. Just get some more in that nose. And then try to keep the muzzle of the mouth and really separate these guys. I can do a lot differently. I have to spend longer doing detail. Yeah. Corazy, I'm assuming that is Corazy Atkins. All right, cool. Your inner critic is having a field day with you right now, huh? Screw that critic. This is not a horrible sculpt. This is not a horrible sculpt at all. Okay. Is there another one you got? No. This is not a horrible sculpt. Let's tell you what's good. You have a suggestion of the clavicle in there. That's great. These lips, even though it's paint and it's hard to see, I can still see that you got upper lip, lower lip, right? This is very good. And you've got the eyes in there. Proportions are accurate. You've got a shape for this forehead that's really good. You've got the side planes for the nose, right? You got a lower plane for the eye. Really great. You got the forms coming in and then transitioning into side planes. This overall structure is really important, and it's what you got to reinforce on. Lose the painting, lose the hair, lose the clothing. Just focus on form. It's getting distracting with the texture in there because the texture just throws our brain off. It's not a horrible sculpt. This is a great sculpt. Now what you need to do is look back in at what's working. Okay, there is always something working in a piece. Find what's working. We have a Unity model, not a Unity, Sketchfab. We're just waiting for it to load. Is there the ability to turn off texture? That's not what we want. Yes. Do not want that. I don't think I set this. Let me see if I can use the mouse. Yeah. Okay, and that's altering my perspective. All right, Steve, what I want you to work on, what I think you can work on is connections. How does the nostril connect? How does the caruncula connect? What happens here in the corner? You have so much solid form working. You have the structure of the cheeks. You have the structure of the lips. You've got the overall face and proportions in place. Now, all of that can be made 10 times better by just of study of how does the nose connect. So alar facial juncture, how's the lacrimal or the palpebral ligaments connect? And then what is really happening in the corner of the mouth? That's what I would focus on. Felix, like the nose, more analyzing, hard to nail reference or exact likeness. Okay. So I would say we have, he's got disconcertingly wide eyes as opposed to here. But your sculpt essentially matches his hairline, not the actual geometry, not the actual face. So he's going to have a little bit more volume here and a little bit less in there. So it kind of goes like this, and then he's got a little bit more. So you got to pull that, you got to really work this transition. And one of the things that I always usually note is that there's a George Bridgman in his book will always do this kind of diagram. In yours, it goes a little bit, let's start at the top because that's where it is. It's like boom, boom, boom. And these are straighter. But in this guy, it's hard to see, but they still slope. So you need to get that slope in place. And that has to do with trimming this. And that's going to be tough. But I think if you make your eyes smaller, it'll help. I don't think they're that wide. We're talking millimeter differences here. Also, the nose is a little wide. And the lips are a little wide. We're talking centimeter. Maybe 1.5 centimeters in the lips. So that's all I would do is just kind of pull these in a tiny bit and work that brow and see if that makes a difference. I would change the eyes, make them bigger. The upper lip is a little too big, and the jaw could be more female. Let me read the comments. Gotta study that lateral cartilage. Even in a woman, you'll have this kind of bow out more than you'd think. And this is again lateral cartilage. I love this upper lip, although the textures are confusing me. So that's a potential problem. This is nice. This is nice. I'd say this is a very feminine jaw. If you look at Keira Knightley, you know, she's got a crazy strong jaw. Or Olivia Wilde, I think. Really a strong jaw. Great eyes. I love the little detailing that's in there. I don't know if it's in the texture or what. And a little bit of detailing in there. So I would say the biggest thing is, how does that nostril connect? Notice how they actually flow inwards. And then the alar cartilage, and then there's a thing called the columella. So nose is the biggest issue I see here. Lateral cartilage, alar cartilage, the columella. Columella, I think. It's been a while. Try that. Otherwise, this looks great. I love the jaw, and I really like the eyes. So I would not change those. Thanks for posting, Mia. Okay, so crazy, you posted for last time. So let me just give you some feedback on this. Oh, it's a screen grab. Yeah, first couple of sculpts, you're getting form in there. I would say a lot of things are happening here. So as an artist, one of the things you want to be doing when you're starting things out, you see everything. It's like, how was it? I don't know if this metaphor will work, but I did this. Let's say the supermarket. Let's use the supermarket as an example. When you walk into the supermarket today, do you see all the aisles and all the food? If you go into a Target or into a Tesco, depending on which continent you are in, do you see all the canned goods and everything there? Imagine what it would be like if you saw all of that stuff and you just were like, you didn't have any orientation on what was what. You were just looking at everything. It's very overwhelming. When you know exactly what you want to do, you just kind of go in, head down, and you just go to the aisles and you're like, dink, 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 you get in there real quick. When you start out sculpting, you see, oh, there's a bump, and 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 there's all these bumps. Your job, until you understand anatomy, is to abstract those. These become one simple shape. This becomes one clean shape. And you start looking for where forms turn, but simplify as much as you can. Transitioning from that, oh, it's a bump, to an artist that's creating something. This is the first step. Simplify everything that you can. Your job as an artist isn't to create bumps. Your job as an artist is to simplify what's in front of you into some readable presentation. Avi, no notes, but you posted a couple of weeks ago. I would assume this was for, this was posted 2 weeks ago. So this is for the crit. So you should already have got your feedback, I am hoping. And so here's our last. Banya, you amaze me. This is crazy. Teach a class. Help us learn how you do this. Let's look at your notes. First, try to design mech concept with lots of insert brushes. Design developed from alchemy. Awesome. I'd like to try to add more variations of options. Change to be more organic shape, not too common mech, more practical movement, overall form, and designs. Okay. So more variations and options. So let's just talk a little bit about that, because there are some things that are like a little redundant, like boom, boom, and then boom, boom, and then boom, boom. You know, these little design things get kind of here. I think it's acceptable because you've got a 3, so it's nice. But to have a 2 and a 2, you know, a grid pattern there can really start to throw us or throw me. So I would think about that. Like here, this is really nice, you know, but 4 of these guys down here in the back, I don't know about. I would probably cut all of that out and try to create some blank space in there for the eye or something recessed. How is this gear connecting to this gear connecting, you know, to all of these gears? Maybe it's something where you start to vary this gear, make this one smaller. So this is like a little tiny gear, and then that way you get this open space. You've got like boom, and then this kind of comes in, and then boom. Nice big shapes. This is really cool. So you got out, small, and then in, right? And voila, and big heavy anchor right there at the end of this guy is awesome, awesome. Really solid, and I like the head in there. And I really enjoy how this stuff works as well, coming down into this. And then you got your little anchor back there that can flip out and really just make him super solid. Don't know if that's the head, sorry. It looks like this is the front. And then you've got these like power units, boom, boom, boom. I love that. And really great shape. Don't know if you need these pieces there, but I love how this protrudes out and then comes in. Protrudes out. So now you got these really crazy angles. And so it'd be neat if there was like a crazy angle in there that you could get by shrinking this. And really great renders as well. Could use a little bit of a blowout maybe. You can start looking at ways to kind of blow things out. You see it starts to blow out here and starts to blow out here. If you can blow it out a little bit, that can help in the photography, the sense that it's from real life. And that's what we got. Everybody who got here on time, I think I got them all. And that is the end of this session. So I've got to run. I've got a life model that's been sitting here waiting for me, getting billed by the hour. Thank you guys so much for submitting your work. I hope I was able to make a difference and give you feedback to improve your work. Have a fantastic weekend. We're heading into the weekend. I got a face sculpting class tomorrow. So if you want to do some face sculpting, check the front page of UArtsy. It should be listed right there. We're going to be meeting Saturday and Sunday and just kind of improving our sense of anatomy. Talk to you later. Have fun. Be well.